Hi, everybody. It's Susan again, and this time we're going to be talking about Venus stationing direct and Jupiter stationing retrograde, both of which are happening on the 4th of September, and that's universal time. So, for most of the world, these events are on the 4th. For Jupiter, everyone except Hawaii gets this on the 4th. And bless you all in Hawaii if you're watching. You'll definitely need some Jupiter love coming up in the next few months. And for Venus stationing direct, this will happen for North and South America on the 3rd, but the rest of the world, most of the world will get this on the 4th. Venus is stationing direct at exactly 1:20 a.m. Universal Time. And that is at 12 degrees and 12 minutes of Leo. So we can see Venus in this particular chart here. We're using an Aries rising chart only because I'm going to do this sign by sign shortly. And I just thought I'd start with the Aries rising. It's not so significant unless you're looking specific to your location. But here we have Venus, and she is at 12 degrees and 12 minutes of Leo. And then Jupiter will be stationing retrograde, and that is going to be at 15 degrees and 34 minutes of Taurus. Now, ignore the time that's up here. For those of you who are more technical and you're always checking these things, just ignore the time because there's nothing that's happening simultaneous here. I just wanted to get the Aries rising. So forget it for the rest of you. And just keep in mind, this is tropical. Tropical astrology is following tracking the movements of the sun over the ecliptical path, over the equator. And because the sun is our star, we follow the movements of the sun. And of course, it's whole sign houses, and that will apply for virtually any time you do a transit reading that's general like this. And I use that in my readings as well. Some of you have been asking. I definitely use whole sign charts for my readings, but I also refer back sometimes to Placidus. That is not necessarily important for us today. That was just a little bit of an update. And also, I do readings. I do personal readings. Thanks for asking. And I'm not taking any readings now. I think I'm booked up until about the second or third week of October. And I won't be able to take any emergency readings because my life is in a bit of an emergency as well. I'm in the middle of a move and trying to put things in storage, keep myself going day to day, and focus on moving to Spain. So thank you for your patience. For those of you who are asking questions on emails and things, I'm not always able to get to right away, nor am I always coherent these days. So there you are. Let's hope that this video is coherent. So let's come back to Venus. Venus is stationing direct then, and just to remind you, she was stationing retrograde on the 23rd of July. And that retrograde station was at 28 degrees and 36 minutes of Leo. So she went almost to the end of Leo, then stationed retrograde and came all the way back to this 12-degree point, 12 degrees, 12 minutes of Leo, basically on the 4th. And so we're looking at a phase of almost 6 weeks of this retrograde action, 42 days in total. And this is something that just gives you an opportunity to go back in time and kind of cover a little bit of what Venus has brought to you up until that point in Leo. The shadow phase for Venus, did I write that down? I hope I did. The shadow phase for Venus is lacking here, so apologies for that. We're going to have to say that it's in June for sure. Now, I can't remember if it was the 11th of June. No, that's for Pluto. So that's for Jupiter. Sorry. No, I'll try and put that in the notes. So I'm sorry, I can't give you the shadow phase for Venus coming back to this 12-degree point, but it will have been no, it'll have been in July. For those of you who are worried about this technical stuff, ignore it. This is more for the people who are really into astrology. So don't worry about it. And I'll put the shadow date down in the comments below just to save time. I'm doing this in between sorting and packing. So it's a bit on the fly, as I have been doing the last couple of weeks. Now, the interesting thing here for our Venus is that the shadow phase for the post-retrograde will end on about the 6th of October. And she actually leaves Leo on the 8th of October. She ingresses Virgo on the 8th of October. And so we're still dealing with a Venus that's covering old territory, meaning what we've discovered basically since beginning of July. And in that movement of Venus going very slowly, we're going to start to feel the energy picking up very slowly. And since that energy is also slowed down, at least in the first half of September, by a retrograde Mercury, which is more likely to be felt by most people, then you can expect that things won't change necessarily immediately. Things are not going to turn on a dime for our North American friends. But nonetheless, we do have quite a lot of things moving forward in a way that, especially in the Venus ruled areas of your chart, which we'll see sign by sign, will start to impact you much more positively. You'll have a sense of things getting unstuck. Now, if Venus is stationing, or Jupiter for that matter, is stationing on a personal point like the ascendant or the midheaven or the descendant or the IC, the immortali, the root of your chart, then that's going to be felt very strongly, as well as for personal planets. So not the outer planets, but the personal planets, Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, for example. Now, if you have those anywhere between sort of 10 degrees of Leo and let's say 14 or 14 and a half degrees of Leo, then you'll be feeling this station quite powerfully. It's very beneficial for you, gives you a lot of positive energy because Venus is quite slow and therefore very strong at this point. Don't go too far beyond that range because these things are not so strongly impacted. I would give it maximum a 3-degree orb, but I'm giving this a 2-degree orb. Let's see what else. Oh, so the meaning here for the Venus, my brain probably shouldn't have tried to deal with these two things at the same time. You could tell this is not going to be easy for me. Let's hope it's easier for you. So Venus now, when she has been retrograde, we've been looking at all the ways that our values are transforming, our relationships are transforming. You might have felt that old relationships have come back, either kind of there as a support or there for review, there as something that you're looking over, examining for you in some way. So it's interesting to ask yourself, how has this affected my values, my preferences, and my desires, and how have they changed over the last 6-ish weeks? And also, what have I learned from my relationships? Or what do I maybe need to realize about myself and my role in relationships? And then also, was there a resonance? Could I detect a resonance with these previous Venus retrograde in Leo cycles? Now, that would be going back to 2015 to 2007, the summertime, so July, August 2015, July, August 2007, and July, August of 1999, and keep going back to 1991 and so on. And so you can just see what was going on. It won't, of course, be exactly the same, but it will be resonant. And it's always very interesting to track these things because then you can see how you're evolving, what might need to be examined more deeply, things that you see that are recurring that can show you that there's some shadow energy that's not being looked at or that needs to be developed or understood better, for example. So ask yourself some of these questions and think in terms of the dates that are applicable here. So keeping in mind, we're looking at the Venus shadow period, which is sometime in early to mid-July. I'll put the date in the comments below. And then, of course, the retrograde, which was 23rd of July, and now the direct station on the 4th, and then coming out of the post-retrograde shadow as of the 6th of October. So keep in mind all of these things and see what resonance goes back through the years. Now, of course, this Venus is also ruling Jupiter. Jupiter is stationing direct, Venus is ruling this Jupiter. And so Venus takes on quite a lot of importance still. And especially as Jupiter, it is stationing retrograde. You can see it here. Jupiter is at 1534 of Taurus, and it's stationing retrograde conjunct the moon, which is exalted in Taurus, which reflects our emotions. It reflects our issues around security, our issues around what sustains us, what supports us, and of course that is the nature of the mind as well. The Taurus is ruled by that Venus and the moon being exalted. conjunct that Jupiter in Taurus. I feel this is really very positive. Just a couple of days later, so 7th and 8th, probably we're already feeling this around the 4th. So let's call it already now. Certainly from the 5th, very powerfully, the sun is trining Jupiter. And this is beautifully supportive. And along with the sun, we've got that Mercury retrograde. So very interesting things tying in. Very strong Mercury in its own sign, in its sign of exaltation as well. And conjunct that sun and trining all of this. So I see this as a really auspicious time. I think we're going to find that much more so for individuals than our collective experience as usual. But I think this is very, very special. And if you have your birthday around this time, I think you'll find that this gives you a really nice boost. That is perhaps, for many of you in this period of time, let's say from the 4th until about the 9th of September, really nice boost for all of you. I mean, we'll see it in different, through the different signs, but I think especially if your birthday is right about now. Now you'll notice as well that Venus, as she's moving direct, will also then square that Jupiter, which she's ruling. Now, what is that date? I better check my dates rather than try and remember anything here. So she is going to be squaring Jupiter on the 16th. And so again, that energy is going to be building from a couple of days before and after. So I'm going to say from the 14th through till the 18th, basically the middle. And that will coincide with Mercury stationing direct, which is happening on the 15th of the month, 15th of September. So not bad. Now, Venus already has been squaring Jupiter on the 19th of July. So that would have been both Venus and Jupiter direct. And then again on the 21st of October, now that time Jupiter will be retrograde. Yeah, and then Venus will indeed be, in fact, in I'll come back to that. Now I'm confused by my own notes. You see, this is not going well at all. My poor little mind has too many things grappling to this. This move is just about the most complicated thing I've ever had to do. Let's see now. What I wanted to show you in terms of the Jupiter is that we've got this pre-shadow from 5 degrees. What a shadow phase in terms of retrograde means is that when the planet is going direct, it crosses a particular point in degrees within the sign, that it will later come back when it's direct again, or that it's crossing the particular point that it stations at. So in this case, the station direct will be at the point that Jupiter was on the 11th of June. That's at 5 degrees, 34 minutes of Taurus. That's where it goes back to station direct again. So start already thinking in terms of the 11th-ish of June. So that can, of course, be a few days before or after. And there's something that is going to be resonant with that period of time in terms of this whole retrograde phase. And then we go from the post-shadow phase, if we go into March of 2024, we're looking at the 23rd of March, which is the time at which Jupiter will be crossing this degree point that it's stationing retrograde in. Okay, so the shadow is interesting because it means that we've already been there. We've already done this point, but from a different energy within the same planet, same sign, but from a different energy. So either from the slowing down and retrograding or the slowing down and stationing direct. So that March 23rd point, we'll find Jupiter again crossing that 15 degrees, 34 minutes point. So keep that in mind for most of the phase, that there's something here that is actually building from sort of early June through late March. And that can be really interesting to track in your own life, and especially so if you have personal planets or points around those degree points. So we're looking at 13 to 18 degrees of Taurus, particularly very auspicious to have either Venus or Jupiter stationing on your personal planets or points, especially if it's the ascendant or midheaven. So 13 to 18 degrees of Taurus. And then in terms of the resonance, of course, we can go towards the fixed signs. So that's going to include, Taurus in opposition to Scorpio, and in square to Aquarius, and in square to Leo as well. So you can look at those degree points if you are any of the fixed signs as well, 13 to 18 degrees. And then for the trine, same thing. So for the easier aspects, then you're looking at the earth signs. So Virgo and Capricorn, and even for a sextile, you can look at the at Pisces. So the mutable signs: Pisces, Gemini, and of course Virgo again. And who else are we looking at? And my brain has ceased to work. So there, I think we've got it. Let's leave it at that. Yeah, the sextiles will only bring in, of course, that will bring in sextile to Cancer, sextile to Pisces, and for the rest it's trines. Never mind. So it's sextiles are only for Pisces and Cancer. So apologies for this confusion. If you are confused, ignore it all, and we're going to jump in now to the sign by sign reading. Let me just double check here if I have anything else that I wanted to say. Oh yeah, for Jupiter. So we did the little kind of going back in time for Venus. Now for Jupiter, we have the last time Jupiter was retrograde in Taurus way back in 2011. And that was from the last day of August until Christmas. So from last day of August until the 25th of December of 2011. So again, if you're old enough to remember, or if you're keen enough to do the math, then have a look at what was going on in your life. And that will have been when Jupiter was stationing and moving direct through those degrees too. And it went back from 10 degrees, 21 minutes of Taurus, all the way back to 0 Taurus. So that station point around the 5-degree point will be included. And that's something that might resonate back 12 years ago for some of you, and especially if you've got personal planets at those degrees. This is not going to be something you'll notice if these points don't show up in a significant way in your charts. So a retrograde is a great opportunity to go over things. It's a great way of learning the lessons of what the signs represent for you and what the planets represent, and also especially for self-growth. So it's about improving yourself. It's really the best use of astrology to see how can I grow into something bigger than this sort of material existence that I live in, and especially with Jupiter, which is about wisdom and understanding what I believe, what I have faith in, and recognizing that there's some things that we can improve. We can go over something, think that this is a great idea, move forward through it, and then when we get the retrograde energy, it allows us an opportunity to really look at it and question it and see if it's still appropriate. Is it still working? Did we jump too soon into something, for example? And with Jupiter in Taurus, that's less of a risk, for example, than Jupiter in a fire sign, but still very helpful. I find retrogrades actually really helpful. A lot of times people feel that there's a lot of frustration and strife and so on. It doesn't have to be that way at all. On the contrary, it can be extremely helpful, really, really beneficial. Let's see. I think we're good. I think we have pretty much covered all of that. I'll just check all of my notes. Yeah, so because Venus represents values and also our relationships, the things that we prefer, the things that we like, all the things that we love, the beauty in our life and so on. And, especially because Venus rules Jupiter, would keep that theme going into the Jupiter in Taurus as well. Those values and relationships that may have changed while Venus was retrograde will be digested and understood better as Jupiter is going retrograde. So now as Venus is moving forward and we're moving through a new phase, eventually, especially from the beginning of October, we can start to grow our sense of what do I believe around these things? If my values change, it's not like overnight, all of a sudden, I've integrated that. It's very rare that something can be so quickly integrated as especially a profound value or a deep relationship. But with Jupiter's help, going retrograde, we can start to really ground that into something that we have faith in, something that we fundamentally believe. It becomes the foundation of our life. And that Jupiter retrograde gives us an opportunity to affirm that, to be able to live through that, to give us a sense of the wisdom and guidance that we need to feel supported as we move forward through all of this. So, yeah, let's have a look then sign by sign. I will come back, by the way, of course, for the Virgo new moon that's coming up. And at that point, Mercury will be stationing direct. And so I'll see if my brain can handle talking about the Virgo new moon and the Mercury station at the same time. So I'm not going to emphasize that too much. And so, in fact, I'm just going to be focusing here on the Venus and Jupiter sign by sign. Of course, we have to remember rulerships are very important. And so we'll call in the houses that will affect for each of us as we go. Now, this will apply to the ascendant, the sun, and the moon. And we want to keep in mind that the ascendant is going to be more obvious in life. It's not like one has a better or a worse effect. It's more that it's more or less prominent or in our awareness. So the ascendant is much more real. We can see it happening in our life in that form. With the sun, it tends to be how we conceive of ourselves, or it can also reflect our work, the mission in life, or our purpose, our work. And then the moon is very much to do with it can be our physical body, it's our mind as well, our emotional relationships. It can also reflect the home. And so those three things apply either by a derived chart or through the actual ascendant of the chart. So listen for all three. And if you've come this far with me in the recording, I thank you. So now we're going to jump in and have a look first and foremost at Aries rising and sun and moon. So Aries, you're having Jupiter station retrograde in your second house. And Jupiter has been since the 16th of May, bringing you a real boost in terms of your security and income, perhaps your investments, issues around family, things that you might have been doing with family, things you may have needed support for, or you've been giving support for within the family. It can work both ways. And that will always depend on your individual chart. It's impossible to generalize these things. Now, Aries, your ruler, would just keep in mind, is across the chart from you. And that's Mars, of course, in the seventh house. Now, Venus is ruling the south node in the seventh house. So there's also quite a lot going on for Aries, not only in terms of your personal growth and perhaps your sense of self-worth with Jupiter in the second. Maybe you're going to be going over that, revising that, but also in terms of how you're connecting in relationships. Maybe certain things have come to light with Venus having been retrograde in the fifth house that could affect your love life or your sense of your personal self-expression, your personal creativity, or even your children. And then that, of course, is going to have an effect on the seventh house because Venus is ruling the seventh. She's also ruling that second house where we find Jupiter. Now, Jupiter itself also rules the 12th house where we find Pisces and the ninth house. And so with Jupiter retrograding, you're going to feel that in the 12th house as well. That means any issues that are unconscious, you've already got Saturn there. We're still ruled by this Jupiter. Always follow the rulers there when we have these planets transiting. And that 12th house is about foreign lands as well. It's about foreign relations. So that's something that might be calling you, or maybe you're dealing with foreigners. It can also be about confinement, and that confinement can be for a multitude of reasons, whether it's health reasons or legal reasons or spiritual reasons. This is very much a spiritual house as well. It's a house of letting go. So this can also be with regards to that Jupiter, something that you're contemplating. What do I need to shed? That can also include your unconscious processes, like the kind of the behaviors that you might have that undermine you, that are not helpful. For example, it's in the traditional text, it's called the house of self-undoing. And so it can be things that we're actually doing day to day, which maybe Mercury and the Sun are trying to show up here in the sixth house, that are then being examined and re-examined, coming from the 12th house. Now, the ninth house is your sense of purpose, and Jupiter rules that as well. Of course, these will really resonate with you if you have planets in those houses already. But nonetheless, we want to see where Jupiter's ruling to get a clearer understanding of how this retrograde will affect you. So for Aries, Jupiter ruling the ninth house will pull that energy of the second house into the ninth. That means your values and a reflection on your values, or your income or money, resources, and potentially family, this kind of thing, including your self-worth, are all going into the ninth house of what you believe or what you have faith in terms of life, God, if you want to call it that, the universe, your sense of purpose, your sense of your higher purpose in this life. And this is all going to be churning, let's say, over the next few months, because Jupiter is moving backwards for 4 months and gives you an opportunity to really reflect on these things. Am I undermining something about my own success? And am I clear in my values, and are they taking me in the right direction? And then with that Venus here supporting that in the forward movement, what is my creative expression contributing to this? And because Venus is in a trine to your, whether it's the sun or the rising or the moon, that's very supportive. It can be really a nice emphasis on what it is that you're bringing out, or it could be through relationships, harmonious new love relationships, or new hobbies, new creative outputs, anything about children. All of this tying in together, think of it over the next few months, particularly with regards to Jupiter and the house that it rules, and for the next few weeks with regards to Venus. It definitely seems favorable. It's a time to really stretch your wings, Aries. It's definitely a time to think of growth. And in terms of the North Node, it's a year and a half. So a long period of growth. There can be a wee bit of strife when the ruler is in the opposite sign. Now, Mars is your ruler and is in the seventh house, ruled by that Venus, which is at least, calming down now that she's direct, calming down the energy of Mars. But see what that might represent for you in terms of professional or personal relationships while Mars goes through that house for the next 4 weeks or so. 3 or 4 weeks, yeah, till the end of September. All right, Aries, good luck with all of that, and we'll see what's there for Taurus. Taurus, of course, Jupiter is in your first house. And at the same time, you've got the moon just at the time of this station retrograde. The moon is also there, exalted. So it's very strongly highlighting you. I haven't put it in this chart, but of course, Uranus is also there in your first house, which I'm sure you've been feeling, no doubt. And now with Jupiter there, the idea of your sense of expansion, your sense of self, what you feel is possible for you, how you would like to grow or move into your life over these last few months since the middle of May, while Jupiter's been there, are now going to be re-examined. So you could say that the last 2 or 3 months of the passage of Jupiter has brought you to this point, and now you're going to go back over that and see, has it been appropriate? Is it the thing that's working best for you? Is this definitely the direction you want to take? And also, do you need a boost of confidence? Do you need a boost of an extra boost that allows you to go deeper into this personal growth? Keeping in mind that Jupiter is ruling your 11th house of friends, there can be some change around friendships, as well as the 11th house is also your hopes and dreams for the future. It's money that you earn from work that you do. Jupiter will certainly help you with that. But Saturn in that 11th house, which Jupiter is ruling while Saturn is there till January 2025, is restructuring your connections with people. It's restructuring your goals, your sense of the future, and perhaps having a sense of limitation or a sense of extra obligation around that. Now, Jupiter also is ruling your 8th house. And so that also is something to do with other people's money, shared resources, money that you share with other people, inheritance, taxes. It's intimacy of all kinds as well. I would need to see your personal chart to see how this is really playing out for you. Of course, that depends on so many things. It's really very hard to do these general readings, but just keep in mind that eighth house issues that can also be with regards to fears or a sense of unconscious blocks or even family karmic blocks might also be coming up here. And as you review that over the retrograde period with Jupiter, you might be understanding better how things are holding you back when really you can get over that and move forward. And certainly from the end of this year, the end of 2023, when Jupiter starts moving direct, that will become more clear and certainly easier for you. Venus, which is ruling this Jupiter, is in your fourth house, which is a lovely place to have had Venus, and she's there for 4 solid months. That's bringing in family. It's bringing in your sense of your roots and what gives you a feeling of happiness and support and security, which is extremely important for Taurus. And Venus also rules your sixth house of your health and everyday life and work. And so something there is changing because the south node is moving into that. That's where the eclipses are going to be, the 6th and 12th axis in your chart. And so keep in mind that Venus on the south, ruling the south node, Mars is in your 6th. And so there might be a health issue coming up, or there might be something to do with, hassles, and it can be contracts, it can be obligations that require effort. 6th house is your day-to-day work. It's your the actual thing that you do every day, as well as your schedule, but the health as well. And when Mars goes into the 6th, and again, this will depend on your personal chart, there can be some issues of health that require your attention. So with Jupiter moving through the first house, that looks like it brings you a lot of benefits. So that's a good time to fix whatever is going wrong and take it one day at a time. Of course, Venus rules that first house too. And so now that Venus is direct, you're going to have that sense of how things can move forward in the more practical areas of relationship and your values and what you feel is supporting you, even if Jupiter is moving retrograde. So you're kind of getting the underpinnings of that while Venus is taking you forward. A bit of a paradox, but Venus moves faster, and therefore you'll feel that much more powerfully. All right, Taurus. So good luck with all of this, and I'll see you in the next video. So we have for Gemini, Jupiter moving into your moving retrograde in your 12th house. And this is a place where we can discover a deeper layer of our unconscious process, a deeper understanding of our motives, deeper understanding of our spiritual connection, potentially connections to family and ancestors as well, especially because you've got Mercury in retrograde in the 4th house. So it ties in family, family at a distance even, or people at a distance in general who are important to you, whether they're still alive or not. And this will bring you an opportunity also to feel maybe a little bit more rest is necessary. You've probably been quite busy. You generally are, Gemini, and now that Mercury is retrograde, that's your ruler, as well as Jupiter retrograde, it will give you an opportunity to slow things down. If you aren't taking that opportunity, I would really invite you to do that. And in particular, in September, slow things down. Venus is still not moving quickly. And Mercury is retrograde till the middle of the month, and Jupiter is only just beginning its retrograde journey. So a really good time to slow down and take stock. Often, Geminis find it difficult to take a decision, often because they're doing things too fast. They're trying to just get stuff done and move through things, and it just kind of messes things up. So with your ruler retrograde, it's a good idea to really slow down, take some time, and revise, especially in those areas of relationships and your values and what supports you, as well as what beliefs are grounding you. What are you relying upon? Now, Jupiter also rules your 10th house of career, and you have Saturn up there, also retrograde. I'm not going to talk too much about the Saturn at this point, but just to say that there is something that might feel like it's slowing down in terms of career, or that you're reviewing and wondering, is this the right thing? Or maybe the the progress that you've been making is now just needing to have a phase of just putting things in place rather than going into new things. You're kind of more looking at what needs to be established and maintained. Venus is in, oh, and also, of course, Jupiter rules your seventh house of relationships. So this can be very, very particularly strong in your in this experience for Geminis. While Venus is retrograde, Venus is stationing direct, has been retrograde now for nearly, for ish, let's say, about 6 months. Oh my God, 6 weeks. Sorry, Gemini. I'm as tired as you are, I think. So Venus now ties in very, very strongly here to that Jupiter, which is ruling the seventh, because she's ruling Jupiter. Jupiter's ruling the seventh. Now, we don't know, of course, what your personal chart looks like, but definitely it looks like relationships are going to be something that is taking on a new gloss, let's say. As Jupiter is going retrograde, you have an opportunity to heal old wounds or deal with things that may have been complicated, or especially because Jupiter's in the 12th house, that's the house of self-undoing. How have you contributed to things going good or bad in relationships? That would be something to reflect on, especially because Venus is ruling the 5th house, where we find Libra in your chart. And Venus, of course, represents relationships in the house of, in the sign of relationships in Libra, in the 5th house, which is all about love. This could be about your kids as well. Jupiter is also the karaka for children, especially young children, even pregnancy. So that can involve things like that. So, so lots of things to contemplate now, Gemini. Slow yourself down. Certainly give yourself the month of September as much as possible to allow things to digest and get a deeper understanding of things. And you will get a feeling of things moving forward, particularly in the second half of September. But there's no harm at all in taking more time, scaling back. If you're not clear on a choice, then scale it back and wait a little bit. And don't go around and ask 10 different people for their advice, which is often what Gemini is also doing. Just don't talk about it so much. Just let yourself digest. You've got a beautiful opportunity there with Jupiter in your 12th. Let yourself really sit in it and contemplate. So good luck with all of that, Gemini, and I'll see you in the next video. So Cancer, Jupiter is stationing retrograde in your 11th house of friends, and it's ruled by Venus now direct in your second house of your self-worth and your values and income, your family, what supports you, and so on. So Jupiter is bringing in a sense of a new understanding or giving you an opportunity to digest a social growth or growth in terms of your dreams and aspirations. It allows you to go over the details. It might give you a welcome opportunity to slow things down where things have come to a certain point where it felt like all systems were go. And now it's like, okay, we've come to this point. Now I need to digest it and understand. And the word digestion is really apt here because the second house rules the body, and it helps us also to understand the assimilation process of food, especially because also we've got Mercury in Virgo, which also represents that. And so, yeah, so with this Venus ruling that Jupiter, your values have changed. Your values around your belongings, your your money, your income, and things to do with your family that might tie into your future hopes and dreams, or new groups or old groups that you're looking at in a different way. Sorry, my throat is too dry. All the dust of going through all my stuff. So there's a great example. I have Cancer, Moon, and Rising, and I've been sifting through old things, like decades of stuff, and keeping things, throwing out old things, things that I thought I would want to keep forever. I just look at them and say, nope, we're done, moving on. And it's been extremely liberating. And that capacity also now to live in a feeling of lightness and live in a feeling of less, pardon me, less stuff is very cathartic. And now Jupiter is allowing me to go back over plans and hopes for the future and ground them, solidify them. I need to go through administrative procedures and different things that I need to organize to make this big change come to fruition. So just as an example, personal example, because I've got this rising sign as well as the moon. Now Jupiter is ruling also the ninth house for Cancer, Sun, Moon, and Rising. Pardon me. And that is the sense of purpose. That might be something that Jupiter is asking us all to reflect on. What is the purpose? What is my higher guidance telling me? The ninth house is also foreign lands. And so, of course, in my case, I'm moving to a foreign land. In your case, it might be more about higher education, for example, or it could be issues around the father. Ninth house is also father. Jupiter represents the guru. Guru is wisdom and also represents our parents. So that can also be something very powerfully connecting us to our family and parents, because Venus is also in that second house, which represents family. And Venus is ruling the second house. Sorry, the Venus is ruling the fourth house south node in Libra as well. So that can tie in family as well. Jupiter also rules the sixth house for Cancers. And that sixth house is your everyday work. It's your health. It's your, maybe some of you are exhausted like me, or coughing from kicking up the dust from going through your old stuff. It can also be things around changing the way that you work, restructuring that. Now with Jupiter retrograde, it's a brilliant opportunity to do that. You might even be reconnecting or connecting in a new way or a different way with friends and associates and people that you work with, or people that you could start to work with, or that you started to work with, and now you're working on the finer details of all of that, tying all of that into the sixth house. So the ninth house and sixth house are also influenced by this Jupiter. And then, of course, for the Venus moving direct, now it's your fourth house and your 11th house that are concerned. And so these are money houses. The second house where Venus is, the 11th house where Jupiter is, are money houses. And then the fourth house is what brings you happiness, what makes you feel stable. So you're probably also reflecting on how to organize your finances, how to make that work, what needs to be spent money, what you need to spend money on, how you need to invest that money, how you need to save money or buy things. Now with Jupiter moving direct, things that you may have opted out of, you're now deciding, I will buy that, or I will pay for that, or things that you in fact did and invested in. Now you can look at that and say, well, actually that I didn't need that, I don't want that anymore. That shift in values can really be a big area of transformation for Cancers as well. All in all, really favorable overall. And again, that will depend on your natal chart, but very, big progress happening. And that North Node that's in the 10th house, both representing career and also social status, is ruled by Mars in the fourth. So that Mars in the fourth is putting a lot of effort and energy in terms of your home, how you need to feel secure, what grounds you, what feels like a sense of security for you. And that will take it out into the 10th house. Well, that Mars is going to help you bring the elbow grease, let's say, into the fourth house. It will help you to feel more courageous, let's say, as you expand into the 10th house over time. All right, Cancer, best wishes for all of that, and I'll see you in the next video. Leo, you've had the great good fortune of having Venus in your first house all this time. Since the 11th of June, Venus has been there. And now she's moving direct, and she's ruling Jupiter, which is in your 10th house. And Jupiter has been there since the 16th of May. So lots and lots of support for you personally, as well as growth in career. Of course, this will depend on your individual chart, so that's not always the case, but most likely some real benefit here through, of course, some hard work as well. Jupiter in the 10th can also bring you a revised social status. That can be how you engage with the world, how the world sees you, for example. And that Jupiter is ruling your 8th house. That can be a house of marriage. So this can be a change in status in terms of marriage, going in either direction, resolving issues that might have come up around what brings you together with a partner, or what you share with a partner. Or it can also be resolving issues in such a way that you realize it's not working anymore. Jupiter in the angular houses will make you take positive decisions for yourself. It doesn't necessarily mean the decision is easy. It can be that separating from someone is a very positive thing for you, for example. So it's not necessarily what a lot of people would consider positive, but it's good for you. This is the main thing. Or the outcome, let's say, can be good for you. Then you also have Jupiter ruling that the 5th house of children and creativity, love affairs, and so on. And so as Jupiter is retrograde, maybe there's something that's coming up that is going to be revised, or new responsibilities come in this area of life. How you engage in those things can change your attitude to that, because the 10th house is also ambitions. It's maybe you're increasing your ambitions and your sense of what it is that you'd like to achieve, how you'd like to be recognized. And then that will maybe feed back into that 5th house of how you need to use your creativity, or even how you might be affecting that particular choice of yours is affecting your children, for example. Again, we'd need to see your individual chart to see that. So, of course, Venus is ruling your 10th house from the 1st house, which is a very strong position. Venus in the 1st and Jupiter in the 10th angular houses. These are really, really strong influences on your life. This period of the last few months will have been extremely influential for Leos, particularly. And then Venus rules your 3rd house, and that's siblings and your neighbors and your immediate neighborhood, and also how you live your life, what's going on around you in life, the busyness of life now, especially so with Mars there. So a lot of this is very, very positive developments. It might require you to take a new action in terms of how you communicate things, communicate your needs, for example. There's something that you're learning about that, because the South Node is there asking you to shed some things, shedding a way of being in relationships, or a way of communicating, or even, a potential sense of what skills do I need to develop. Maybe the skills I'm using are no longer useful for what I'm now wanting to achieve, and I need to figure out how to deal with that, how to change that. And Venus going direct will give you a sense of courage and positivity, and even an appreciation from other people of the skills that you have, because Venus ruling that house of skills can give you even an artistic and creative flair as well, that gives you more confidence. I always like to say with Leo, particularly Leo rising, the cliche that Leo is like super extroverted and always wanting attention, it just doesn't hold at all. Most of the people I meet with Leo rising, particularly, are actually quite happy not to be in the limelight, and they're even a bit shy and even doubting. And of course, that depends on your chart. But beware of these cookie cutter cliches. So it could be that for some of you Leos, in fact, I would even say for many of you Leos, you really need this boost. It gives you this courage and a sense of confidence and a sense of being just fine as you are, both the Venus in the 1st and Jupiter in the 10th. And now it's just giving you this opportunity as Jupiter goes retrograde, where you can evaluate, reevaluate, and integrate what it is that you now believe about yourself, or about your ambitions, or about what your role is in this in the wider world. So best wishes with all of that, Leo. I'll see you in the next video. So Virgo, your ruler is in your 1st house, retrograde, and you've got Venus stationing direct in your 12th house. So there's a lot of change for you. Having your ruler in your 1st house is already quite powerful. The sun is there. This is your season. So you're really feeling quite motivated, quite forward looking, because you've also got Jupiter in that 9th house, which has been giving you a bigger possibility, a bigger sense of what you're here for, a bigger sense of, and this has been since May. I've been talking about this since May. So this just particularly shines for you right now. So Venus, perhaps retrograde, has been showing you ways that you may have been holding yourself back, 12th house being hidden enemies, or it can be, and I like to say hidden enemies particularly often come from inside our own mind. So it's where we sabotage ourselves, where we hold ourselves back, things that we're not really doing to support ourselves. Now Venus is going direct, and you will have a better sense of all of that. And now you can say, okay, enough of that. I'm moving forward in my own self-expression, in my own way. This can have you connecting to people from faraway places, particularly because Jupiter, which is ruled by that Venus in the 12th, is in the 9th, and both the 9th and the 12th represent foreign lands as well as foreign people. Jupiter in the 9th is pulling in this sense of, what is my purpose, my higher purpose? What do I believe? What can I trust? What can I have faith in? And when Jupiter is going retrograde, you're integrating that, you're reflecting on that. There are things that you have been learning quite rapid fire over the spring, particularly since May, and then June, especially since Venus then moved into Leo. And that will be something you need to take some time to digest. Reflect on where you're getting advice from, reflect on the people you are getting advice from. Jupiter in the 9th is often very, very helpful for getting good advice, good teachers, good relationships with the father, for example. It's another way that this can look. The 9th house is the father in the way I look at it. 10th house is parents. 4th house is mom. And so we also have Venus ruling your 2nd house of money. Mars is there now, so there's quite a lot of drive around money, your own values. So Venus now going direct is going to give you a boost to your sense of self-worth, what you find important, how you act upon that, what you need to feel secure in terms of finances or investments, for example. Something along those lines is being shed because that south node is ruled by Venus. Going through that 2nd house, north node is in the 8th for you for the next year and a half. And that is a new way of relying on other people, a new way of sharing resources, a new way of being intimate with people. This can also be a new way of understanding your mind. With Venus in the 12th, this can also be that as well, because the 12th house, like the 8th house, is our unconscious process. It's very karmic. Family stuff and karmic stuff can come up for you as well. Now, Jupiter is ruling the 7th house of relationship as well. And as it goes retrograde, this can call in a lot of revision around relationship. Who's got your back, for example. With Saturn there, you're definitely doing that work. Reflecting on who's best in your life, who would you like to be there. Can be very interesting for business as well, because that reflection of Jupiter ruled Saturn in the 7th can make you more serious about business partnerships. Taking that more seriously doesn't necessarily mean something negative, but it will perhaps slow down engagements that you might have already made a commitment to, or prevent you from going too deep into new engagements or going back over old ones that you had let go of for a while. So all good developments in the 7th house of relationships. And then, of course, Jupiter rules your 4th as well. That's family, your home, where do I live? Jupiter retrograde is going to have you perhaps going over what it is that you need to be happy, how you need to take care of your comfort. Jupiter in Taurus, regardless of the house that it's in, is always going to represent values, your higher sense of values. So you're pulling that into your home as well. And that's a connection to your roots in every sense. That can be your own psychological nature, even more so with Venus in the 12th. And it can also be your physical home, house and home. So yeah, lots going on. And I think in a very personally satisfying way, you will want to slow down and take some time to digest, and soak it in, because you're soon So by the 8th of October, you're going to have Venus moving through your first house, which is really, really lovely. And that Venus is going to be then highlighting your second and your ninth. So all the things that we've just talked about here, Venus will highlight as of October, and bring you even more personal awareness and growth, and I think benefit. So pretty good. We'll talk more about that in a future video. Okay, Virgo, make the best of that. And so Libra, we have your ruler, Venus, in the 11th house going direct now. Always important to keep track of your rulers. So Venus has been in the 11th for 4 months, or she will have totally, in total, been in the 11th for 4 months. Now that she's going direct, you're in a position where you're going to feel perhaps more open and positive about your future. This can affect your friendships and who it is that you keep in your life. Friendships are extremely important for Libra. It's a fixed sign. The 11th house is Leo for Libras, and that's a fixed sign, and ruled by the sun. So your friendships are very important to a Libra. Relationships in general, but especially your friends. And so that Venus can really bring in some maybe new connections, new ways of being with people. As the South Node is moving through your first house, you're changing quite a lot. You might be finding now with that Venus going through the 11th that you have a little more courage to speak up in relationships, allowing yourself to recognize where you're not being very helpful or constructive on your own behalf in relationships. And that North Node is there in your 7th house for another long period of time till January 2025. And then, of course, you've got Mercury retrograding in your 12th, which gives you an opportunity also to see where you may have sabotaged yourself in relationships or in terms of your own happiness and your health. Jupiter is in the 8th house, which ties this theme in a little bit because Venus is ruling that from the 11th, and Jupiter in the 8th is going to show you where you might need to revise issues of shared resources, can be things that are hidden from you in terms of what you're doing or how you're feeling about things. It might come to the surface with Jupiter going retrograde, can be a really great time to work therapeutically. Dig up anything that has been causing fear or shame, or anything that that you need to understand about unconscious attachments to things that are not necessarily helpful or healthy for you. Jupiter also is ruling your 6th house. That's also a house of health. And so that axis between the 12th and the 6th is both physical and mental health. 6th is also your work and your everyday life, colleagues and things like that. So there can be something you really need to rectify or work through with colleagues or employees, or in the way that you organize your time. Libras often will tend to say yes when they really want to say no. And with the North Node in the 7th and all of this change, this is a great opportunity to learn that no is the complete sentence. So Jupiter is also ruling your 3rd house. That's your skill set. It's your willpower. It's your brothers and sisters, cousins, aunts, uncles, especially uncles. And it's your everyday neighborhood, the place that you spend a lot of time in, the coming and going of your everyday life. And so there may be something here as Jupiter is retrograding, where that is also up for review. I would have to see your natal chart to see how that's all panning out. And that will, of course, depend whether you have planets or placements in any of these houses that will affect the way I can interpret this. But nonetheless, Jupiter retrograde can have you reflecting on your skill sets, your talents, your way of communicating things, and that can tie into finding lovely ways of saying no. One of my favorites is to say, that doesn't work for me, or that doesn't work for me now. So there you go, Libra. Practice that one, and I'll see you in the next video. Scorpio, this Jupiter retrograde is going through your 7th house of relationship. So much like with Leo, when we find Jupiter in an angular house, the 1st, the 4th, the 7th, or the 10th, this can actually have quite an interesting, potentially disruptive effect on relationships. But the disruption will be good for you over time. And so you might be finding that there's a big shift in terms of how you feel about relationships or what's going on in relationships for you. This can be business partnerships, or it can be with regards to business in general, especially since Saturn is in your fifth, but also it can be your intimate relationships. Important relationships will be affected by this. So going back over things, seeing what it is that you need. Venus is there in the 10th, and so your personal ambitions will tie into this. Your career may tie into this, your vocation, if you're not working for money at this stage in your life. Family obligations, family expectations are also there in the 10th house, parents, and all of that can be affected by this Jupiter now stationing direct, so moving things forward in that 10th house where they may have been kind of held back or requiring some adjustment. Well, in the 7th house, things are moving back for revision, but not a bad thing anyway, because it's not easy for fixed signs to revise. Often there's a sense of stubbornness around change. And so the retrogrades are really helpful for fixed signs because it really drives the point home that these things need changing. And so you can use this opportunity to really seriously investigate your relationships and see which ones are actually working, which ones are no longer working. What do I need to do about that? So there you are. Jupiter also rules your fifth house. That's love affairs, your sense of love and playfulness, your creativity, can be children. This can also pull in that energy of your relationships and what you need in relationships. Jupiter also rules your second house of money and your values. So whatever's going on there in the seventh rather, can be very deeply affected by what you value. What are your personal values? Now, Venus, of course, is ruling that seventh house, and she's also ruling the 12th. And so with the South Node there and currently Mars there, your ruler, Mars in the 12th, there might be something that Venus has been trying to show you about how you're not your own best friend, or that you might have people working against you that you hadn't realized. That's the house of hidden enemies, for example. It can also be where you're not sure in the unconscious choice making, why am I doing the things that I'm doing? For example, like you find yourself kind of reacting to things or wanting things or getting into things, but you're not really fully sure why. So all of this can be very, very constructive for Scorpio, but I do think it requires a certain amount of desire for change. With Venus now moving direct through the 10th, that will be easier. Venus is more personal planet, and therefore, and Venus is currently ruling your ruler because Mars is in Libra. And so that will bring you a lot more of a sense of let's go and do this thing, requiring a new way of looking at things that will require an adjustment. And this is especially true if that's regarding your work in the means of income, because Jupiter's ruling your house of income and money, second house, and Venus is up there in your house of career. I would have to see your personal chart to be able to tell you more specifically, but definitely a good time for you to reflect on how things have been going. Are you allowing things to stagnate, or is it time to shake things up a little bit? This, of course, can affect your children or be actually very much connected to your children, particularly as Saturn is there, also retrograde in your fifth. So, and that Jupiter retrograde can maybe show your children themselves where things need to change. So it's not even, might be also that your children's experience is changing and it's all just kind of tangential to you. It's not necessarily exactly your experience, but it's within an important aspect of your life. All right, so Scorpio, I will see you in the next video. Good luck with all that. Sagittarius, you are having this Jupiter retrograde in your sixth house of work. Of course, Jupiter is your ruler, really significant for you. And it's currently ruled by Venus in your ninth. So you might be having second thoughts around work or concerns where you're really thinking, yikes, what's going on. And Venus in the ninth is now giving you this breath of fresh air after a few weeks of perhaps doubt or reconsidering what is going on in terms of your sense of purpose or your sense of where you're putting your energy. Now, that ninth house can also reflect foreign lands as well, foreigners, foreign lands, your higher thinking, your philosophy of life. And this is anyway what Jupiter is pulling in currently. And so this is something that is, I think, quite positive for you in the sense of Venus probably giving you a lot of a sense of a boost and support, a good support around the choices that you've made while Venus was retrograde last 6 weeks-ish, or even while Venus has been in the ninth house, which was since early June. Now, Jupiter going retrograde in the sixth house is asking you to revise issues around health, around your daily work. Puppy, just wait. My dog is asking for either food or to go out, but she's going to have to wait. And so, yeah, that Jupiter in the sixth is now going to go over territory that you've already covered since June. And so it's just an opportunity for you to realize what needs to be done, what steps need to be taken. The sixth house is very practical. How can I show up in a very practical way to take care of my work issues, whether that be what's my schedule like or what job am I doing? Mercury is retrograde in your 10th house, along with the sun up there. There's a lot of focus on your career, on your sense of what you do in the world. It's a good time for reflection. So don't jump in too quickly, Sagittarius. It is your tendency to really jump in with all guns blazing, and just slow things down for now, especially through September, especially through the middle of September. You won't lose out on anything if you slow things down. Jupiter also rules your fourth house of home. So there can be some reflection on where do you live that might be readjusting to where you live. What needs to be changed? What have I changed? That, of course, that Jupiter also rules you and your first house. And so that can also be about what am I doing? How am I changing personally? This is all very important, and in terms of what you need to be happy and what you need to feel secure, which is where Saturn is currently moving through Pisces as Jupiter is ruling that from the sixth house. So the things that you're working on between now and the end of the year will allow you to feel more secure. So it may not be that you get the result that you want exactly as you wanted up until the end of the year. Now, again, I need to see your personal chart to be able to understand how that's operating for you. But it certainly will find its resolution in the new year. And at the very latest, you'll find resolution by March 23rd, where Jupiter comes back to this point. So all this ground will have been dealt with between now and then. Sounds like a long way off, but it's actually, with Jupiter, these are fundamental questions of life. What is really fundamentally important? What do I believe? What is my vision? What is my belief and faith in what I'm doing? So you don't want to do that fast. This is not Mercury we're talking about here. This is Jupiter. This is about a higher concept of life. And Venus is helping you with that. Now, Venus also is supporting your 11th house of friends, your goals as well, your sense of your vision for life. And Mars is up there too, and that is giving you quite a lot of food for thought around that. And with the North Node in your fifth house, that pulls in a lot of energy to deal with things on your own terms, in terms of your own creativity and what you need personally. It's trining your first house, and that's going to support you a lot. Venus is trining your first house too. Very, very supportive from the ninth house. All right, Sagittarius, just be careful that your impatience is not the thing that is making you worry at the moment. Take your time and everything will work out. I promise you. Jupiter, it doesn't stop bringing you blessings when it's retrograde. It just makes you think more deeply about yourself and what you need, and especially in your house of health and everyday life. All right, good luck with all of that, and I'll see you in the next video. Capricorn, Jupiter is in your fifth house. That's your creativity, your children, your joy, what brings you joy, love affairs, hobbies. It can be entrepreneurial stuff. It also rules your third house, which is also entrepreneurial. And so you are getting now a review, let's say a reflection, as Jupiter is going retrograde through that fifth house, reflection on issues around your children or around your own love life or around creativity. What brings you joy, what brings you a sense of creativity, creative expression. This is trining your first house. Jupiter trine your first house is very supportive, really helpful, and that's in a trine to the sun, which is in your ninth. So a really nice time, I think, for Capricorn. You know, take it, Capricorn, because you've still got Pluto there in your first house. So take it, whatever you can get. Jupiter is also ruling your third house, which is your siblings, your children, your neighbors, neighborhood, the way that you communicate. Saturn has been there since March. And so there's definitely something here which you're reflecting on in all of those areas of life. That can also be your goals, your short-term goals. Ninth house tends to be the higher goals, your sense of purpose and so on. Third house is like, what's my goal now? That's why Saturn is so, Capricorn is so driven. And of course, Saturn is your ruler. So it's helping you to redefine your goals. Perhaps this is a case of taking a step back so you can jump better. As the French would say, reculer pour mieux sauter. You're going to give yourself an opportunity to really prepare yourself for this big change that's coming over the next few months, which I do believe is going to take you further along the path of goals that you have for yourself. Those ambitions are changing with the Venus-ruled South Node in your 10th house. So that can change what you feel is your ambition, putting a lot more attention on what brings you happiness and what brings you security as the North Node is moving through the fourth. Where do I live? What grounds me? What brings me security becomes a really big question over the next year and a half. And then, of course, Venus is in the 8th house of intimacy. It's shared resources, including money, as well as other people's support. So that's really nice because that's pulling a lot of positive energy in as Venus is going direct there. And Venus rules your 10th house. So it looks like you're getting some more cooperation or even potentially a boost to your mood as well. Venus retrograding through the 8th may have had you doubting things or going over, things that might have brought you a sense of confusion or fear in terms of your own psyche. So very positive. Jupiter also rules your 12th house. And so the 12th house is foreign lands and foreigners. It's faraway places. It's trade with all of those places or exchanges of all kinds with those places or people from those places. And it's also everything that's hidden, everything that's behind the eyes. And then Jupiter ruling from the 5th house can also give you some new insights into where you might be not being supported by certain people that you hadn't really realized before. That's the house of hidden enemies. And that includes your own self, things that you might be doing. And again, it depends on your natal chart. I would need to see where there are planets and placements that affect all of this. But just keeping in mind, it can be something that has to do with your own behavior that's not really working for you. Be careful if you've also been a bit self-indulgent with Jupiter going direct in the 5th house, ruled by Venus, and also now Venus squaring Jupiter and Venus already having squared Jupiter in July. That self-indulgence can come in there, and that could itself be the problem. And so now with with Jupiter going retrograde, for example, and Venus going direct in the 8th house, you're kind of going, oh, right, that wasn't very good for me. So that can really help you if there is some kind of issue around health, for example, or psychological stuff that you'll want to pay more attention to. Yeah, so I'd have to see your personal chart to give you more detail on this, but generally speaking, with Jupiter in a trine to your 1st house, it's all good whether or not Jupiter is direct or retrograde. So enjoy it because you got that until the 24th of May of 2024. So not bad. So Aquarius. we have Jupiter in your fourth house, which is very helpful in terms of feeling more support or feeling positivity, brings you an expanded sense of what you need or what you'd like to have to feel more secure, more support. And Venus in the house of relationship, now going direct, is really supportive. So if there have been issues around family connections or mood or worry around feelings of security, material or psychological security, Venus going direct will help you. It can bring helpful people into your life, like a person that has a Venusian quality can be there, or it can actually be a harmonious energy within relationships that are ongoing or new ones for that matter. And so Venus is ruling that fourth house. And even with Jupiter retrograde there, it can be very supportive. So Jupiter retrograde is no less helpful. It just means that it's much more internalized and much more process of reflection. Now, Jupiter is in an angular house, and so it's going to be very powerful. Venus is also in an angular house. So issues around relationship and money are huge for you right now. And then Jupiter is ruling the second house of your chart, Pisces in the second house, and that's where we find your ruler, Saturn. So money, 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 money. It's big, big, big stuff going on for you. And then we see also Mercury in its own sign and in its sign of exaltation alongside with the sun in the house of other people's money. So there can be something that is really shifting for you. I think if there is some feeling of insecurity or being stuck financially or stuck in terms of your security or even emotional sensitivities or emotional and psychological security, certainly let things roll through September. Don't jump to conclusions. Aquarius can do that, jumping to conclusions and being sure, so sure, but never questioning that certainty. That's not a helpful way to be right now, because there's a lot of moving parts, especially through September. And again, I would have to see your own chart to see how things pan out for your chart and your personal experience. But this is definitely an opportunity for you to make the changes that you need to make so that you feel that security, you feel home, feels more steady, more grounded. And Jupiter will be doing that for you until the end of this year. And that will, of course, call in what's going on with Saturn in the second house. So you might require either a little belt tightening in terms of your spending or in your finances, for example, or you might require a little more work in terms of how you generate income. Jupiter also rules your 11th house. That's another money house. So that's the money you earn from what you do, especially if you're a self-employed person. And now that Jupiter is retrograde, you might have new insights and new ideas around how to make money, what you'd like to do, or how you can do it better, how it can be more long-lasting. And again, it doesn't make it less helpful. It just means that what's already being done might require some revision or might not be the best way to proceed, or you may have skipped some steps and made some changes that now require a little bit better tweaking, let's say. Venus is ruling your fourth house, of course, of home, as we saw, but also the ninth house. And so your ninth house is also affected now that Venus is going direct. You've got Mars there as well and the South Node. And so there's a change here in terms of your sense of what it is you're here for, what it is that you believe. Jupiter is anyway bringing that question in. Jupiter in the Venus ruled sign of Taurus is already kind of asking you to question your faith in things, question your faith in what makes you feel stable, perhaps. Could be connecting you to your parents more strongly as well. Venus ruling that ninth house can have you feeling now there's a time to let go of a sense of what you were here for that's no longer really happening for you. You've had Saturn go through your first, you're going to soon have Pluto go through your first. And that's a game changer. So you're going to change how you show up in the world. So this is a nudge. So take the nudge and run with it, because this is an opportunity for you to excavate what you really need and how you really want to live your life. And the South Node is saying it's time to let go of something in your old way of seeing what you believe in or what you have faith in or what it is that you do. your system of philosophy, guiding philosophy, or your sense of purpose. And then that North Node in Aries in the third is pulling that into what you do every day. So you might need more effort right now to turn that steamliner. You know, when a ship turns in the water, it takes ages to make a big shift. So especially with a fixed sign like Aquarius and Jupiter in a fixed sign, this can be something that allows you, then you take this time to turn that ship around, but it will require a bigger effort and some patience. And Saturn retrograding anyway is going to ask you to take patience, use that patience for better results to come. Saturn will be moving direct in November. We'll talk about that closer to the time. So yeah, make the most of this period of real deep understanding, Aquarius, and you'll see that the results will come. Do the hard work now, and then when Pluto moves into your first house in January, it will make much more sense, and it will be a lot more graceful than if Pluto just kind of bashes its way into your first house and you're not really prepared from the root of your chart from Jupiter being in the fourth. All right, make the most of it, Aquarius, and I'll see you in the next video. Pisces, of course, Jupiter rules your sign, and Jupiter is in the third house, and so there's quite a lot of busyness in your life at the moment since May. An enormous amount of activity and talking and communicating and exchanges of all kinds. Venus has been in your sixth house of work since June and has been retrograde since 23rd of July. So there may have been this kind of sense of not being able to get done what you needed to do, especially since Saturn is in your first, but also since Saturn has been retrograde in the first. So there's more effort required, or a sense of more clarity required. And that clarity may not have been there so readily with Venus retrograde. Now Venus is direct, and you have this opportunity now to find that clarity, to move forward, to do something that you feel is more in line with what is necessary. There's just this, the dust is settling over the next couple of weeks as Venus picks up speed. Venus rules that third house, but she also rules the eighth house of other people's money. So there may be something in there in terms of what it is that you share, in terms of resources, or in terms of support, just like friendly support from people. And now you're going to find that all just really flows as well. Perhaps you had a connection with old colleagues, old friends, old health issues potentially as well, or old day-to-day stuff that needed revising as Venus was there, moving backwards through the sixth. And now as she picks up speed, moves through the sixth house, you're going to find a lot more harmony and grace in the workplace or in the everyday work that you're doing. Maybe a feeling also of things like, contracts and paperwork and all this other stuff. It becomes more clear as well, becomes a lot more solvable or just more direct. And of course, the sun, which is ruling that Venus, is in the seventh. So that Venus is in Leo, so that's ruled by the sun. And then the ruler of that sun is Mercury right next door in its own sign and in its sign of exaltation. And Mercury is retrograde, so it looks like there could still be stuff to deal with, stuff to do, especially up until the middle of September or even towards the end of September when Mercury is out of its shadow, and into the beginning of October when Mercury finally moves into the eighth. So you're probably not out of the woods yet, Pisces, until Mercury clears that seventh house. But nonetheless, when Venus is moving from the sixth into the seventh, I think you're going to find October overall much more graceful. Venus is also exalted in Pisces, so she's always good for Pisces in general. Then that depends on if you've got a day or a night chart. But nonetheless, you've still got Jupiter as your ruler. Venus is exalted there. So what more could you ask for, Pisces? Venus is ruling that south node in the eighth. It means that you're letting go of things that you used to share with other people, or ways of connecting with people, or letting go of old fears, letting go of old taboos. What else is the eighth house? The eighth house is your psyche. You might be also recognizing aspects of your psyche that need revision and taking on new values. North Node in the second house, taking on new values. So with Jupiter ruling your first house and moving retrograde, Saturn in the first house and still retrograde, you might have a feeling like, okay, I'm not really up to this, or I just need more rest, or I just need to take more time. No problem. There's no hurry. Pisces, you of all signs should know that time doesn't even exist. So never mind. Even if Saturn is in your sign trying to say, yes, it does. Just take the time that you need. You've got the next 4 months while Jupiter is going backwards through your third house. And this will be an opportunity for you to revise issues around your immediate neighbors, neighborhood, your communications, your travel, things like that. So it looks like some things that have been going on since June, let's say, are mid-June, let's say, are being revised as Jupiter is going back over them. And so certainly in 2024, you'll find that the pace of life picks up in a way that is much more clarifying. By that time, both Saturn and Jupiter will be direct. And then that will be a big relief for Pisces in terms of being able to move on with projects. But take your time, invest in reviewing what you're doing, invest in the bigger questions. So Jupiter is the bigger questions of life, the higher purpose or the higher philosophy that I'm guided by. Think of that. Okay. All right, Pisces. So good luck with all of this, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.